50 days into the Kenya Kwanza government, and it looks like situations have exposed the soft underbelly of a government with empty slogans and rhetorics like bottom up, with no concrete solutions being witnessed so far. In the first 100 days, the Kenya Kwanza government manifesto said they would be focusing on alleviating the pain and the pressure of the common Kenyan taxpayer, including reduction of taxes and the cost of living. So far, none of those things have been done, but there's a request by the government to give more time to its organization for them to create organization around how they will tackle various issues. However, so far, the dire consequences have been met, and history has no respect for any excuses. 2.5 million is the number of livestock which has been lost so far in the drought situation, the most severe in 40 years actually, that is facing this side of Africa, and especially in 23 plus counties in Kenya. A loss of 181.5 billion. What is the government doing apart from relief food, which is being flown by choppers, which are consuming high amounts of fuel, high amounts of resources in delivering just a 1 liter container of cooking oil, just a bag of rice, and 2 packets of unga? Will this be a long-term solution to some of these counties which have been actually grappling with this situation for quite some time now? Those are some of the issues we are addressing this morning on the newspaper review section. There is a reversal of decision-making from this government, or from Uhuru's government to this government, in which President William Ruto has overturned decisions in restructuring his government and sending a message that his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, did not actually put correct policies, directives, and programs that will steer this country forward. Are some of these decisions well informed, or is this just political vendetta and political realignment? Lord of Hot Air, Murkomen, fails to give SGR deal. This is the second time I'm seeing this very sensational wording of proceedings. Once it was in the Supreme Court, where the Chief Justice termed the petition by Azimio la Umoja in the last presidential election as hot air. And here, Murkomen released hot air as well on social media and to the press as regards to the details of the SGR deal between Kenya and China. It only appears that he made public the transactions and the terms of transaction between Kenya and that Chinese bank. However, nothing to do with collateral or what is in place in case Kenya defaults on repayment of that loan. Dennis is here with me, and he tells me that there's a lot to consider when it comes to this SGR contract between Kenya and China. First of all, beginning with the fact that who said that we are going to default anyway? We are still trying to repay it, and we haven't gotten to the time where we have defaulted on the loan and action needs to be taken. Let's delve into much more of his insights and also what your thoughts are on social media at KUTV Kenya. This is the newspaper review section. Reversed is the title of the Daily Nation, and that's where we begin this conversation. Welcome to the show, first of all, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Richard.
You've been with us, of course, KUTV and radio
yes.
and TV for quite some time now. And you're not a new face to us, but you're a new face to our audience. So I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself on that camera, and also maybe your thoughts, random, generalized, particular, personal, anything else, before we get into serious matters of what is in the dailies today.
Okay, first of all, good morning. My name is Dennis Omondi. I'm a journalist with KUTV currently, and also KU Radio. And recently I also got interested and started doing a bit of voiceover acting and doing voiceovers. This morning, I think I like what I'm seeing in terms of the coverage. You know, from a journalist perspective, when you get to see what other journalists are covering and you see what they're giving importance, at least after a long period of politicking and politics, it looks like we are now going down and going to the real issues that are really affecting Kenyans, starting with that climate change.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting you've mentioned that, because I have to note that for the first time, I'm not seeing Raila Odinga on the front of the dailies.
On the front of the dailies, Raila Odinga is not there. But
there's
I was
no mention of Raila, Daily Nation, Business Daily, The Standard, and also, only one of the dailies carry the face of Ruto as the biggest image on the front of the papers. So.
And we can say that is almost like expected. I mean, he's the president.
He's the president. He has to make an appearance.
Yeah, he has to make an appearance. But there is a paper. We just don't have it. But Raila Odinga, I think, is on the Star today. He's on the Star.
If you have the Star, tell us if you can see Raila Odinga and what the story there is. But yeah, enough of politicking, man. I think it's time we got into real and serious issues.
Yeah.
Yes. The front of the Daily Nation, reversed, is what they are focusing on. Of course, executive shift, policies, directives, appointments, so many things to speak about the shift and the restructuring which has happened in the Kenya Kwanza government. But maybe on face value, is it something that we expected this? Is it being done in the manner that we need it to be done?
I think I've seen the Nation have listed about 16 things. On the front page, we have about 10. I think it was not by surprise. We really expected some of these things to happen because, I mean, this is a new president. This is a new regime. He wants to leave a legacy and he wants to be known for something. I mean, you know President Moi for something. You know President Kibaki for something. You know President Kenyatta surely for something. You also need to know President Ruto for something.
Right.
The only thing I don't understand is some of these things that have been reversed are some of the things he supported when he was the deputy president.
Right.
I don't know if at that time he was just playing the good subordinate, being under the boss at that time. But some of them were expected. Things like appointment of 6 judges.
He was there.
It was something that was a matter of when will it happen. Yeah, because the courts had pronounced themselves on the same, so we were just waiting. President Kenyatta was just playing games, but the truth is,
we knew that
his role in that whole process is like ceremonial. He doesn't have substance. Once JSC says something,
that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Some of the other things, of course, here, as you also mentioned, that were there during his time is Kazi Mtaani, and he's now abolished Kazi Mtaani. Is that I see positives and also see negatives. I might not be privy of what is the reasoning behind some of these decisions. Of course, some I can just stamp as from an outsider's perspective, what is good and what is not good for Kenyans. First, the scrapping of fuel and flour subsidies, which is, he also explained that we need to get to a point where we are now used to the real prices of these products so that we can find a solution which is permanent and not just cushioning Kenyans from month to month. Yeah, the reverting of the cargo from Nakuru to Mombasa. Of course, it's a very contentious issues in which fingers are being pointed to President Uhuru Kenyatta, to others who were, were purported to be having personal interest in the port. However, Kazi Mtaani, I thought Kazi Mtaani is good for the youth.
You know, but he's replacing Kazi Mtaani with something else. He's saying we are doing away with Kazi Mtaani, but then the housing project is going to employ the youth in the construction of those affordable housing units that is launching. He's also saying, I heard about is it 5 billion trees that are supposed to be planted in over 100 million acres throughout the country. He also said the youth will drive that one. When it comes to subsidies, I don't think he did away with the subsidies. He only transferred them from one area to the next because he now decided to subsidize fertilizer now. Okay. Which looks like a gamble to some extent because the rains are not consistent and all those things. So what if we subsidize fertilizer and then the rains fail? Will the farms really get the produce that we are expecting? So we are 50-50. Let's wait and see how his subsidies go. because we saw President Kenyatta's subsidies gobbling up billions in a very short time. Let's see how this one will work.
All right.
Yeah.
Definitely going to see what comes out of some of these decisions which have been reversed or cancelled, and 16 of them detailed there on page 7 in the Daily Nation. I like the sentence there above, as it also points out to how you began your response to this. There's a new sheriff in town, and the president appears keen to paint his administration as starkly different from his predecessors. Of course, a new sheriff, new administration, new rules. We have to find a way of differentiating from President Uhuru Kenyatta's projects. That is what you get on page 7 of the Daily Nation. There's a bit of hearsay, maybe just still sticking on the presidency. There's a bit of hearsay which has been squeezed there on the left side of the Daily Nation, where supposedly there's a UDA lawmaker who's revealed plans to scrap the term limits of the presidency, and they are saying that this will allow President William Ruto to vie for 4 times if this was something that is actually happening. But as I said, hearsay, because what is I've been trying to find a name here. I can't see any name.
You know what, Richard? And that's why I'm not worried at all about this one. In fact, I think that, okay, maybe, I don't know the reason why it was there, but then it had to be placed there for some reason. But Kenyans have seen the rule of President Moi, 24 years. And they've seen how 10 years has also fared with some of them. I mean, you get tired with somebody after 10 years, you want another person. How will this pass? If it goes through parliament, then I believe if it has to meet the people anyway, it will not pass.
It has to be rejected.
I can tell you that. And if anything is the case, why do we need more than 10 years? And you saw recently somebody proved to us that even 45 days can work.
We just saw in the UK that 45 days
45 days can work.
Enough. Yeah, we should be having a different kind of governance in which we treat presidents as CEOs. Yeah,
but I think there is no cause for an alarm. I feel like that is not going anywhere because it was said by an MP addressing the locals. You don't know you don't know the political dynamics in the local area. Maybe that's how he excites his
support base.
But then we can't just shed it off on a light note like that, because politicians have got this trend of saying things to test the waters. And then they see how you receive it. If it gets some good ratings and good reception, then they come and back it full throttle. So let's see how it goes. And maybe there is something to it.
So do not take this lightly, though. Don't allow politicians to be playing around with with such statements. I'm seeing here that Fafi MP Salab Yakub, I'd love to know whether this is a UDA or an Azimio member of parliament. Fafi member of parliament, his name is Salab Yakub, who said that he's the one who's giving us this information that there's been indoor meetings or closed door discussions which are giving now this proposal of the new development that they might bless President Ruto with the ability to run for 4 terms if that becomes something that is presented on the floor of the House. God forbid.
The good thing is, even right now, even if it becomes just mere talk and people talking in low tones, if it has to go to parliament, it finally must have a face. Somebody must come forward and sponsor that bill, and we'll
have to wait.
Yeah, we'll just see who is behind it.
Right, so we are looking out for the first member of parliament who will be proposing this very ridiculous motion so that we do some public lynching exactly as it's supposed to happen. That is what is happening on the front of the dailies. You can read that story by Collins Omulo. I happen to know Collins Omulo. And Collins, if you're watching the show, I'll be talking to you after this to know whether this is actually information we should be worried about. But KQ strike, also a big story happening in the country. 4 days now, there's that escalation. Kenya Airways has escalated that dispute with the striking pilots, filing contempt charges against the pilots, saying that it's against court orders, and also threatening to withdraw the collective bargaining agreement, even in the face of this industrial strike, which has led to the bosses saying they will be, getting new. They have already advertised actually, and they're saying they are on the process of employing new pilots, new workers in the aviation industry. Of course, those who have also joined the Aviation Workers Union and the CALPA members in terms of going on a slowdown of activities. They will be sacked, and we've seen this. Now, there are three angles here, Dennis.
Yep.
I wanted us to have a look at, also to get your thoughts on. First is, of course, that very nice headline on that story, who will blink first. Yeah. As you said this morning, the very good coverage which is happening, and I think I have to commend the Daily Nation, except maybe for that story on term limits. Maybe it will maybe work out in the end, but I think good coverage, even in terms of how they framed the headlines here. Who will blink first? That's one angle we have to take a look at. But secondly, KQ has been running on bailout by the government since COVID-19, making losses even from the previous management, moving over to Michael Joseph and his team, who of course is being asked by most of these pilots to resign from office. And you told me that we might not be aware of the internal operations in KQ. We might dismiss the pilots' concerns that deal with the issue, deal as one of the travelers was trying to say in a press conference last week that I deal with you as a passenger, I give you my money, you make me fly.
Yeah.
You and your management deal with your issues, you and your government deal with your issues separately. So there's that. There's the internal workings of KQ. There is who's going to blink first in case nothing happens. And thirdly, should the government be continuously bailing out failing parastatals, or should we call them parasites? Like KQ, Mumias. We've seen this happen all across various industries. KPLC as well, not out of the hair there for some of those parastatals, which I'll be referring to as parasites now going forward. What should be done in those three categories I've presented to you?
It is so funny. Somebody was just talking about, the other day I was just reading somewhere, somebody saying, why is it that everybody is running to go into government? Parastatals are making losses, and then private institutions that do the same things or almost the same things are making profits.
Or better. Yeah.
Or better. But then people are running literally to go and head these parastatals. Recently you saw the president name CSS, named PSS. Now people are waiting for him to name CAS. And then the next will be now named those who are heading parastatals and those things. So everybody is running to get into the government and to make a kill if there is any to be made in those parastatals. When you look at KQ case, for example, the Business Daily has got a very interesting graph in today's newspaper. You realize that these people are talking of making 300 million losses every day.
Every single day. Yeah.
As long as this strike is sustained. But then when you look at their own reporting, in-house reporting of how much they are making, they are in the negatives. In fact, that graph, the upper side has nothing, the lower side has
has all the information
all the bars and all the information, and you wonder, how is this? But in terms of who will blink first, I think it's going to be the KQ management. The pilots must have known before even they went on strike how important they are to the company. And if you follow this story, it is not something that started yesterday or the other day. It is something that has been there for a very long time.
Is this, when you say this is something that has been there for a long time, I wonder, is this a pride of Africa? Isn't that how we usually brand Kenya Airways?
As we look at what is happening right now, I don't think I don't think they qualify for that tagline.
Right.
They don't need to go with that right now, because when you look at other countries, Uganda, their airline just took off the ground the other day after being silent for some time. Tanzania is doing well. Rwanda just landed their first Rwanda to UK direct flight yesterday, but then you look at KQ, things are not really looking good on the side of KQ. So I think the government just needs to sit with these people. I saw the CS Transport using a very common style of dealing with strikes, saying, oh, you are trying this new administration.
You are trying to test the waters of the Kenya Kwanza government.
You are testing the waters of the Kenya Kwanza. You use, it is like you are twisting them to come to the table. And there are tactics we have seen even with the teachers. When teachers strike, now we are revoking the CBA agreement. I mean, you signed it.
Right.
When you signed the CBA agreement, if you didn't have a plan of implementing it, and now you are saying you can't implement it, look for a way to work this out. Otherwise, it doesn't look good for us. Even in terms of PR, I think we are looking very bad out there.
Right, definitely at this moment. Especially, I saw that on the first day of the strike, we were supposed to be, of course, flying out a few of businessmen from the country to London, where there was a travel and something to do with the hospitality industry, a conference, a world over conference, and it couldn't happen because most of the planes were grounded. There was no way to access London from Mombasa or from Nairobi. And you're saying that management will blink fast. How long do you think it's going to take before they blink?
I think it's going to take
it's 4 days now, right?
It's 4 days. I don't think it can go beyond a week. I mean, it will just be bad because already you can see wheels are moving. You can see KUTV is talking, offering themselves to mediate between these two parties. You are seeing the pilot saying we were ready to talk. They're the ones who are not talking. And of course, the government, if it is true that 300 million shillings is being lost daily, the government can't sit down. And if they sit, then I don't know what they're doing in office. But this thing is even more than KQ and government and KUTV and all those people. Because I was reading in the People Daily today, the horticulture industry are losing 45 million at the same time. Pharmaceuticals coming into the country come through these aeroplanes and all those things. So it is more than just
KQ.
Yeah, than just seeing those pilots on TV taking tea. Is it Marubani House or Marubani One? Whichever country
and wearing
they
fancy
have
pilot attire. However, the Kenya Airlines pilots are not striking just for matters of pay or just trying to sabotage their ailing employer. There are other issues as well. They're saying that the management has inflated salaries, and they're hoping that this is also one of the reasons in which, if the salaries are cut, we can realize a turnaround in the amount of money that is there with the national card. They're also demanding ejection of board members and management and staff that they do not like, which brings me to the second point which I just raised there. Are there maybe internal workings between management and the pilots that we are not aware of? Because in his response, Michael Joseph said that apart from the pilot saying they do not like him, he has not received any concrete reason on why he should resign, and therefore he's not going to resign until they present a reason which is beyond the personal. And I'm hoping, is there a reason beyond the personal?
I believe there is. Sometimes back, it was published the allowances and salaries of the board. And you could see how much they are making. And there was outrage in some quarters because they were good money, colossal amounts, if you allow me to say that, for a loss-making company, that is. And you start asking yourself if that was happening. And of course, the pilots are seeing all these things. They know what their employer is getting, and they feel like, okay, we are not well compensated. If they get that for what they do, we think we can get more for what we do.
Right.
And then the reason why I was telling you also that KQ, how it is handling this thing, is also quite interesting. You advertise for slots of about 400, 380 something pilots. And then the first qualification is 5,000 flight hours.
It will have to be the same pilots who are on strike.
Exactly, and they know it. And then I was reading from one of these papers, the 130 pilots signed that they are not fit to fly, and apparently it is allowed for them to do that. but it elapses within 48 hours. So after 48 hours, I don't know if they will be fit to fly and get back to work. I'm waiting to see that. Actually,
those are the ones who do not want to be put on the side of the ones on industrial action at the moment. So who will blink first? You can read there at the back of the Daily Nation. KQ and Pilots Union doubling down on the fourth day as they try to find a middle ground. However, the airline insists it won't engage in talks with the pilot and has begun hiring new employees. So Captain, Major, Minor, you can try and shoot your shots. Pale hivo, kuna pilots who are being hired. Pale hivo also, Captain Manu. I know a couple of pilots around here in the station. Ni wakati wenu kuokoa the national carrier. That's happening on the front of the Daily Nation. COP27, Ruto is telling off the West countries to stop delaying tactics. It's still on the Daily Nation, page 2 and 3, but it's headlined there on the front of the Daily Nation. Ruto tells off the West over delay tactics. So there are things here which, interestingly, maybe I can digress a bit and then we get back to matters of COP27. A few weeks ago, we were holding a discussion with a few other colleagues here on KUTV on matters of corruption and trying to see how we can level up as a country. And the conversation is usually democracy is a long journey. It takes so many years to get there. The US has taken 400 years, and at this moment we have to rely on a few loans here and there, on a few decisions by rich countries, by NATO, by whoever has veto powers in the UN. And here I see that this is the same thing that Ruto has been saying. His Excellency President Ruto has been saying in most of his speeches. His first speech at the UN Assembly in New York, when he first went there, he pointed fingers to richer nations who have been ignoring Kenya and other developing countries during COVID-19, saying that there are funds which need to be availed to some of these countries which are also battling a global problem. And now he's saying that we have a global problem in the name of climate change, and that some of these richer countries need to be availing resources financially, so especially because there is an agreement which was signed 16 years ago to avail trillions of money to these countries every single year, but that hasn't happened. My question to you, Dennis, even as you maybe respond on various issues which have arisen from this COP27 and from Ruto's speech so far, should we continue relying on rich nations to solve our problems, or is there a way we can be self-reliant? Will we continue sending out delegations, presidents, diplomats to complain on global platforms how we are alienated, how we are segregated, how we are not getting any help in combating some of these issues, including drought, climate change, and COVID-19, health pandemics, everything that is on a global perspective? We see other countries dealing with them within their borders. Why can't we do that as a nation? Maybe a response to that, and also some of the other things you've seen from COP27.
Okay, personally, I think that should not be the case. But then, reality is reality. Those countries that we are talking about, if you look keenly, they have got more leverage than ourselves. Mm-hmm. They have what it takes. And that's why when they take the lead, just take, for example, even COVID-19, we had the COVID here. Mm-hmm. And you saw them taking the lead in terms of financing science and scientists to look for the vaccine and go and get all that. I don't know if Kenya, mm-hmm. we would have done it. Yes, it is our wish that we get there. It is our desire that we get to those levels so that we find homegrown solutions to our problems. But then there are some issues that really require us to pull together our resources and do this. In fact, I'd argue that if the African Union could marshal us as Africans and we start there as a continent, mm-hmm. and we do it, it would really make more sense. But doing it as individual, especially on things that touch on a global scale like climate, I think it is good if we came together and mm-hmm. to accept that there are countries that have got much more. If anything is the case, we are only suffering. We are told that we are suffering the effects of what is being done mm-hmm. that side.
Right.
It only makes sense that if you are the ones contributing the most to the problem, contribute the most also to the solution.
Right.
So you don't create the problem and then we come here to start looking for the solutions on your behalf. So I think them taking the lead, it is not just right, but it is a responsibility. They need to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
The 27th session of the annual United Nations Climate Change Conference has kicked off. As we've just discussed, there are various issues, 175 agenda items on the table being discussed, among them the recognition of Africa's special needs and circumstances and financing for the loss and the damages that have been there or have been seen as a result of climate change. We are having 40-year or the worst drought in 40 years in the Horn of Africa. We can see that in Kenya, but also other effects of climate change, like in Nigeria, where floods have been causing a lot of displacement of people from their homes and also destruction of property, something that is painting a very grim picture of what might happen into the future. Of course, as you said, if you don't come together on a global scale and provide solutions on some of these global problems.
And
anything of interest also that you can
and I believe we're going to find a solution to that, because if you go everywhere, every country almost feels this drought in a certain way. When you come to Kenya, it is drought and deforestation and all that. People can see what is happening in areas like Kajiado, Turkana, everywhere. You go to places like Nigeria, you have mentioned, it is now too much floods. Lake Victoria here, the sea levels are rising. You go to places like Brazil, Australia, you find wildfires and the temperatures
ice caps are melting in the north.
Yeah, ice caps are melting. Things are just out. So it
hurricanes in the US.
Everybody is feeling this thing. I was just seeing a story related to that, where a lady from Kuresoi North, it is in the Standard, the children had to cook chameleons. I don't know it is on which page, but it's on the Standard. The children had to cook chameleons, and you can see
and they're hospitalized now.
Yeah, how bad the situation is. It is something we cannot really leave alone. There is something that is on the front page of the Standard. I don't know if you are ready for the Standard.
Yes, let's dive in. I think we can segue into the Standard, and before, maybe I'm hoping it's the SGR contract, or is it Ruto's deal? Of course, this is also one of those things which have happened at COP27. President William Ruto there, as you can see him smiling, as always, with the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Can we say these are two Kenyans?
Of course. In fact, a prime minister with this president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first Kenyan UK Prime Minister.
And you can see how much he gave us. 500 billion.
500 billion is, yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot coming from the UK.
Lakini lazima utume pesa home. Black tax. Wanaitanga black tax. Pesa nyumbani lazima. 500 billion. Very good amount there. Of course, offered there by the UK Prime Minister during the COP27. So hajanda tu kupeana speeches and complain, also signing deals, which I think is very commendable, I have to say.
And can we say that this marks the shift from the east to the west? That this government is now shifting? Because come on, look at how they are making SGR, trying to make SGR public, and now going for the west.
Especially if you look at how it's now been framed here on the Standard, side by side. From that angle, I will take it. On one side is the on the west it's the Chinese, and on the right is the west.
Yeah.
So we can say maybe there's that shift. That's interesting.
And you can even see the number of delegations from the US and all those countries from the west that have been received at State House since swearing in and all that. It looks to me like this new regime, the Ruto presidency, I really think it is going to look more towards west.
Is that a good thing, or it doesn't have to be a thing at all?
No, I think it's a yes or no thing, because these countries also engage you depending on their interests. I mean, who gives you 500 billion for free? They also have to get value for their money, the ones they are giving. The only thing I like with the West is they really like asking for what the money did and looking for the result of what they did, you did with their money, as opposed to China, who gives you money,
And
whatever you do with it,
we don't really care.
We don't really care. We just need our money back. If you cannot give it, give us something in return.
Right, that difference in the capitalistic and communist approach
Exactly.
of the different regions of the world. Here on page 4, they have detailed that deal, 500 billion towards the green energy projects. I think I can just, it's because it's 6 items, I can quickly go through them.
Okay.
And maybe if you hear something that you want to chime in, you can tell me. The details of the projects are like 6, or they are exactly 6, it's not like 6, they are exactly 6. Malindi solar expansion, going to take 7 billion in terms of investment, and this is going to be constructed by a UK company with finance from British International Investment. The second of those projects, Menengai Geothermal, 2.5 billion investment in the geothermal project, and which is being led by GDC and Globelec, some of those foreign companies, and which have signed an effective power purchase agreement with KPLC. I hope Stima itazima. Grand High Falls Dam, 25 billion investment, a public-private partnership on the Tana River that will generate hydroelectric energy capacity and irrigation for 400,000 acres of farmland, and it's being led by UK engineering firm. Number 4, Nairobi Railway City. Nairobi Railway City, a 5 billion investment into a green regeneration of central Nairobi, anchored around a new central rail station connected to the BRT. Nilikuwa naulizia hapa BRT a few weeks ago how the development is looking like. Inakani kama this is how the direction will be going into incorporating the latest innovation in green building technology and planning in terms of that transport system. Number 5, United Green, 31 billion investment into climate smart crops and agro-industrial processing systems via a joint venture that will be happening in Kisumu County, creating 2,000 jobs and providing an income to a further 20,000 farmers across the Lake region. Number 6, which is the final project, guarantees. The UK government is collaborating with CPF Financial Services to launch a new guarantee company that will de-risk investments and unlock private financing from pension funds and insurance companies for projects in Kenya. The government of the UK will commit 2 billion to the company, which will be mobilizing 12 billion of new climate finance for Kenyan infrastructure over the next 6 years. Quite an ambitious, over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Quite an ambitious plan for that 500 billion, and all of them being dedicated towards green energy projects that will generate income, generate jobs, and also fast-track development in the area of technology and transportation.
And
Any key takeaways?
Of course, it adds to the point I was raising about countries having their interests. You notice that these programs are going to be driven by UK-based companies. The same way SGR was done by, I don't know, China Road and Bridge Company,
Yes.
something like that. But then what I like about the whole thing is how spread out the projects are. You have in Malindi, you have in Nairobi here, you have in
Kisumu.
In Kisumu, you have in Central something, so that when it is spread out, people don't feel like tumenyimwa projects because we didn't vote for you,
Yes.
and all that. I think it's a good thing.
Also, another thing is that there's also public-private partnership, so it's not entirely money that is going to be with the government.
Exactly.
This is just investment projects which are also going to have other private investors involved to ensure that, of course, there's transparency, as we are always afraid as Kenyans kwamba tumepatiwa 500 billion. Saizi niko sure if I check out on Twitter, someone has said that hii iko karibu kuibwa by next week.
Yeah, exactly. But now this one, when you look at it,
Ama ishaibwa, according to some of other Kenyans who might be thinking so.
in fact, when you look at it, it looks more like commitments made than cash. You
Yes.
know?
All right. So you can read more details on that on page 4 as we try and wind up on the standard. On the left, load of hot air. Hot air making a comeback here on the headlines for the second. I remember that Murkomen, CS Murkomen now, was also among the ones on Twitter during that debacle between CJ Koome and the lawyers of the Azimio side, when she said that that was all the evidence was hot air.
Yeah.
Murkomen went to Twitter the next day to say that the boxes that were taken to the Supreme Court were full of hot air. He is also Another one with hot air is presenting us with hot air. But
And-
did we really expect to see the details?
And by the way,
of
the
SGR
CJ,
contract?
the CJ recently said the term hot air was not personal. She didn't mean to hurt anybody. But
Uh-huh.
when you look at the story of Murkomen and this hot air, as the Standard puts it,
Mhm.
clearly there is a question that we all needed to ask at some point.
Mhm.
If we say the contracts said you cannot disclose the contents
Mhm.
of this contract,
Mhm.
then how would Murkomen make it public? Because what we are saying is that whatever he posted on Twitter is just a scratch of the surface. Of the surface. The
Yes.
real thing is inside
The real
there.
thing is not yet out.
And whether we'll get the real thing is a question we need to answer, because we are told.
Do you think we will?
No, it's very difficult because we have to get express permission from Beijing.
I think as a journalist, maybe I should rephrase that. Do you think we should? Do you think we should get access
Of
to the
course.
terms of the contract?
Of course we should. This is our money. Why hide us? Why keep us in the dark?
Why
If we-
specifically the SGR though? Because there are a lot of other projects around. Why specifically this SGR deal?
You know, when you look at this SGR deal, sometimes you feel like you want to laugh, but you can't laugh because it is also painful in a way. But I don't know. We have two deals here. The Nairobi-Mombasa SGR, and then now extension to
Nairobi,
Naivasha.
Naivasha, yes.
And the first deal was clearly against us and more favor had more favor towards China. And then with all that, we still went for a second one. Like the first one was nothing. I don't know how these people were signing all these things. But then from what we have learned from SGR, I kind of feel that maybe we should also be let to know the details of other contracts. How have other contracts been
Done, right?
Because if this is the trend with all the other contracts,
Then we have a lot to worry about.
yeah, Kenya is very rich. Actually, we have so much money.
Mhm.
We have so much, and that's why when you hear that now there are talks of, I don't know, universities should make their own money, we stop funding them. I mean, we have money. You can't stop funding them. The thing is, just look at how you budget your money.
Right.
Just
And
budget
there's that
properly.
fear. There's that fear that assets, including the ports, have been signed. Of course, the Auditor General did give that information in 2018 that the port is among those which will be put as collateral, and that the Chinese will be taking it over if we do not pay. And maybe some might also dismiss this as hot air, but there's precedence to this. In 2017, the Sri Lankan government lost its port to China
Yeah.
for a lease period of 99 years after failing to show commitment in the payment of billions of dollars in loans which were owed to China. So currently the Sri Lankan port, which is called Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, is currently under the Chinese the Chinese government. And in 2017, just right around that time, President Kenyatta did give out a statement in 2018 actually at State House. He said that he will be making the SGR contract public. However, the Chinese government didn't want that, and they did send out their ambassador to Kenya, Mr. Wu Peng, to say that Chinese laws are against making such agreements or such contracts public because they will be detrimental to the interests of the Chinese
fact-
government.
In fact, what I even found more laughable in that whole agreement is the fact that the agreement is executed based on Chinese law,
Not on Kenyan law.
not on Kenyan law. And then, if there is any dispute, we have to send a delegation from Nairobi to
To China.
Beijing. So what if they get angry and decide that our people are not coming back?
Now
Because
we have hostages and we have a loan.
imagine. So
And also,
the-
as you said, it's funny that we are using Chinese laws and not Kenyan laws because a court judge did rule some time back, Justice John Mativo actually, that Kenyans have the right to know what pertains in the details of the SGR loans in a petition which was filed by the Muslims for Human Rights. But the government, as we have known, or I will say for the previous government, did not obey the court orders as many of the other court orders which were placed before it. What shall be done to the SGR contract maybe to finalize this?
this SGR contract, maybe the talks, we saw the CS talking about renegotiating the deal and the terms of the whole contract. Maybe that can be our saving grace, because as it stands, the contract, I want to believe that it was signed by our officials, senior, in fact, the right officials who should have signed the document. And by signing, it means that we made ourselves binding to the agreement. So maybe we just renegotiate if there is room for renegotiation, but I don't think that we can get out of that.
I call sarcasm to it.
Yeah.
You know why? I think the Kenya Kwanza government, as I started with my earlier statement, I feel like there's a lot of games which are being played to try and hide the kind of inefficiency which they are facing, or which they've come to realize. And this is an independent opinion from me, considering the fact is that during President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure is when the SGR contract came to fruition. That's when it was signed. President William Ruto was there, and he has been seen in public during his term as DP praising the SGR, terming it as a legacy.
Defended it, actually.
Defended it as a legacy for him and former President Uhuru Kenyatta. If you go to CS Murkomen, he was a senator at the time when the SGR contract was tabled on the floor of the House. He was a chair or member of a couple of committees. He was majority leader
And of course,
later. This is not something that you didn't see before. This is something they've had. So
no, like even when you look at the MPs, the likes of majority leader currently Kimani Ichung'wah, Moses Kuria, and they were both in the budget committee of the National Assembly. And when you look at these budget committees, they are always led by the government side. They passed these things. They are the people who even passed the debt ceiling and everything to allow these monies go to these projects. So when they start to make all these comments and trying to make the president look bad, I think on the face value, many Kenyans will buy that, because Kenyans live in the present, in the moment. Even the politics, the way we vote, we'll vote based on what we've been told today in a rally today, not by thinking at what happened in the past.
Right.
So I really don't think that, in fact, when you look at the only problem I have with the government currently is trying to please everybody. I think for me as a Kenyan, I want you to tell me the truth. Do we have the money? Yes, we
Some
have
would
it.
argue.
We don't have it. Tell me we don't have it. Instead of making a promise, today you stand in a podium, make a promise. Tomorrow another government official is making a promise. The other day, another government. Just let's
do it. Just do it.
Yes, and let's go one thing at a time. Let's do this, we are done, we move to the next. Instead of making so many pledges, so many promises at the same time, at the end of the day, we might end up being too confused and not getting anything tangible really done.
Right. And it becomes a circus,
Yeah.
as I said earlier there. Of course, a lot of theatrics, and as you said, even the reactions to the KQ strike, reacting on a public platform, trying to twist Kenyans, trying to twist pilots or other members of the civil society. So maybe focus on one thing at a time, as Bwana Dennis Omondi is telling us here, a journalist with KUTV and radio services, of course, giving us his insights and his journalistic view to some of the headlines which are making their way on the dailies this morning. Kama ukona, there was that cartoon I was told to take a look at before we wind up, on the Daily Nation, right, by Dula, yes, by Murkomen, on the hot air issue. I always love how they frame just a single paper. Hiyo ndio hiyo contract yote ametutishia nayo hiyo weekend mzima, only to find that there's nothing inside. So hot air, as portrayed by cartoonist Dula by the Daily Nation there. Get a copy of any of this. Kama uko na the stuff, nilikuwa nataka ututumie picha tuone kama Raila Odinga amemake headlines huko, but sijui kama tumeipata.
But it's not made the headline for the good reasons. I think it's,
what was the headline?
I think it's for the bad reasons, because it has to do with the nomination of
John Waluke?
No, MPs for the East Africa Legislative Assembly. And turns out a number of his family members are on the list.
It's actually here. Let's actually read that list as a final thing, so that we can make him, squeeze him into the news, into the news review. It's on the Daily Nation, page 8, where they've detailed the big political names which are on the list of Kenya's nominees to tutapenya lini lakini Dennis, if let me just read the names here who are supposed to be representing Kenya in the East African Legislative Assembly. Ndio niambie vijana tutaingia lini hapa. KANU Chairman Gideon Moi, KANU Secretary General Nick Salat, Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, Christina Pratt, who is the sister to former President Kenyatta, Winnie Odinga, who is the daughter to Mr. Raila Odinga, Kennedy Musyoka, who is the son to Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka. Last week, I saw the daughter of President William Ruto leading a delegation in Morocco, Tangier, with a lot of Kenyans trying to go and see what are some of the opportunities they can get there. We see Raila is in Egypt as well, in the moment, and they're also proposing old guards and some of their family members to go to the East African Legislature.
No, and I'm just wondering, why can't Kenyan politicians understand that when you present yourself for an election, there is a possibility of you losing and winning, and when you lose with grace and wait for 5 years. It is not a must that now, what is Gideon Moi going to do in East Africa Legislative Assembly? No bad intentions I have. I actually wish him all the best in life. But I mean, Gideon has everything. He has served as a senator and everything. When you lose, I think if you still have that dream, make a comeback after 5 years. Let other people do these jobs.
Let's send other people to the East Africa.
There are only 9 posts, if anything.
We have turned politics into such a career investment in which, if, as you said earlier, kuna watu wanangoja to be appointed to parastatals, to CASs. We've made the political scene such a prime spot for careers, in that people don't want to let go any opportunity. I'm sure if there was a rerun for a member of parliament somewhere in Kiambu, I would see Ferdinand Waititu, I would see Songo, I would see all of these people coming back to try once more. So
I think it looks like being called Mheshimiwa is really nice in this country.
Very lucrative in this country. When maybe one day you'll become a Mheshimiwa. But that's what we have this morning so far on the dailies. We're going to wrap it up. We can't dive much more into, of course, all of the details here, but make sure mmesoma hizi headlines, mmesoma the more details. The Financial Standard there in the middle of the Standard, na kupatia more business stories. The Business Daily, which I couldn't get into, but we'll be reading the quote at the end of the Business Daily. And all the confusion in the country should not make you forget that Manchester United lost this past weekend, Chelsea lost this past weekend, and those were the last games of the English Premier League. We are waiting for the Kenya Premier League to kick off. Mimi sijaenda game so far. Don't know what's happening with the caretaker committee. Please turn around your situation as we head to the World Cup. I don't know who you're supporting for that, but it's happening this month from the November 18th, or we have 13 days to go, so you can be prepared for that as well. Dennis Omondi, please close it up with the quote.
So you say I have the last word.
Yes, have the last word.
The quote is, your strength doesn't come from winning. It comes from struggles and hardship. Everything that you go through prepares you for the next level. This is a quote by Germany Kent, an American print and broadcast journalist.
Let's get it again.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
yes, you always have the last word.
So it says, your strength doesn't come from winning. It comes from struggles and hardship. Everything that you go through prepares you for the next level. It was said by Germany Kent, an American print and broadcast journalist.
Right. Everything you go through prepares you for the next level, and everything you've gone through through Biashara Tuesday this morning is preparing you for the next level, which is coming up in a few hours. So usiende mbali sana, stay tuned, give me your comments, KUTV Kenya, and also on social media platforms at KUTV Kenya, at Richard_Okenya. The hashtag I'm looking at, hashtag Biashara Tuesday, coming back with all that feedback. Don't go far.